I usually review cameras and lenses when they're brand new. The Fujifilm X-Pro1 has been out for a couple of years, but it is still a current model. In fact, you might have seen reviews of this camera from when it first came out. But all those other reviews are wrong. Hi, I'm Larry Becker. Now, the reason those other reviews are wrong is because of the enhancements that Fujifilm has done since the X-Pro1 was first released. The old reviews are now outdated. Fujifilm is one of those companies that releases good hardware and consistently improves what's on the inside with firmware updates. Even though this camera has been on the market for a couple years, there was an update as recently as January 2014. It improved things like focus performance and even changed some button functions. Last year I reviewed the XE1, which produced crisp detail, accurate colors, and low noise when using high ISOs. Now the X-Pro1 is every bit as impressive because it uses the same 16.3 megapixel X-Trans CMOS sensor. There's no optical low-pass filter on the X-Pro1 sensor, so the detail is even more crisp than most of us are used to getting from an APS-C size sensor. The ISO range is from 200 to 6400 native and 100 to 25,600 expanded. But those are just numbers and they don't tell you the full story. 3200 and 6400 ISO images are surprisingly clean. And when you pair that sensor with one of the impressive lenses available for the Fuji X mount, your image quality will be extraordinary. Speaking of amazing lenses, I got to test the X-Pro1 with a Zeiss lens. Specifically, it was the Tuit 32mm f1.8 planar T-Star lens, which produces outstanding results when used in conjunction with this camera. By the way, with the 1.5x crop factor, it's equivalent to a 48mm lens in 35mm terms. The bokeh was great, and the shallow depth of field images were exactly what I'd hoped for. All the areas of soft focus were just right. There was no false detail or patterns that you often see with consumer-oriented cameras and less expensive lenses. I'd bet you'd be able to capture competition-quality artistic images with this camera and lens combo. In fact, I've seen large format output from accomplished pros that I was sure came from a state-of-the-art full-frame camera until those friends of mine told me it was from their X-Pro1. Back to the X-Pro1 body. If you're coming to Fujifilm cameras from the modern world of Nikon, Canon, or Sony DSLRs, you'll be happy to know that you have access to all the shooting modes that behave like programmed auto, shutter priority, aperture priority, or full manual. But how you get there is just a little different since there's no mode dial. Here's an example. To automate everything, as if you were in programmed auto mode, you just put the shutter speed dial on top in the A position, and then you put your lens in the auto aperture position. Then you get the same performance as the functions on the mode dial if you set it to programmed auto. It just happens in a different way. A note about aperture controls though. Some lenses have a flip switch to turn on auto aperture. Some lenses, like the Zeiss lens that I mentioned, have a manual aperture ring with an auto aperture position. And some lenses, like the Fujinon 16 to 50mm f3.5 to 5.6 zoom lens, don't have any lens-based aperture controls. So your X-Pro1's control dial becomes your aperture control dial. Some of the things I really like about this camera include the Q button and the control panel screen that lets you change all kinds of variables without a trip to the menus. I like the ergonomics of the camera and the build quality. I like the programmable function button and the lock on the shutter speed dial. I love the hybrid viewfinder. It's an optical viewfinder, and since this is a mirrorless camera, that means that the optical view is slightly offset and you don't see exactly what the lens sees. But the great way the engineers designed the viewfinder gives you lots of options to see what you want to see whenever you put the camera to your eye. Whatever is on the rear 3-inch 1.23 million dot LCD Whether it's the information display, a live view image, or custom data that you choose, goes away automatically when you put the camera to your eye. There's a beautiful overlay of data on the optical view as you look through the viewfinder, including an indicator about how large your image area will be within the optical field of view. In other words, because the X-mount lenses have firmware in them that tells the camera about the lens, it knows about the field of view. That way, it can superimpose a box in the optical viewfinder that gives you a preview of your image area. Then, if you want to use the electronic viewfinder, just quickly toggle the viewfinder selector on the front. And then you get the 1.44 million dot EVF view. On the other hand, if you're looking at the optical view and you want to see things more closely, optically, you just hold that same control for a couple of seconds and it zooms optically. The X-Pro1 speed is pretty impressive overall, with a burst rate of up to 6 frames a second. With the focus system updates, it's a better performer for capturing action than it was when it was first released. Now that's one of those things that early reviews mentioned that has been cured with the firmware updates. The camera captures 1080p video at 24 frames a second, but this camera is for people who want to capture beautiful stills and just informal video clips. There's no control over various video settings while filming, and there's no mic jack, so you have to use the onboard mic or an external recorder. One last thing that makes manual focusing a challenge for stills and even more so for video is the focus-by-wire manual focus of X-mount lenses. It requires quite a bit of dialing just to change the focus. So, the autofocus speed is faster now as a result of firmware updates, and there are some other nice improvements since the X-Pro1 was introduced. For example, the firmware updates have added focus peaking, so you can see what's in focus much easier when you're using an electronic focus like the LCD or the EVF. The FN, or the function button, beside the shutter button has additional options, and the down button of the selector is now a second function button. That last one is really nice for me because I've assigned the down button to be my autofocus point selector. It used to be a two-hand process to change the focus point with the viewfinder up to your eye, but now you can easily do it all with your right thumb without taking the camera down from your eye. One other change to the X-Pro1 since it first rolled out is the price. 2 years on the market means the price has come down in spite of the free firmware improvements. The X-Pro1 has always been a reasonable price for its feature set, but now it's even more affordable. From the retro style design to the modern high-quality sensor and advanced feature set, there is no question that the X-Pro1 is designed to appeal to enthusiasts. There are even presets to capture images that are inspired by various Fujifilm film types. And with the lack of full auto features and scene modes, and the fact that there isn't a pop-up flash, only a hot shoe, beginners would probably be better off with something a bit more novice-friendly. If you're an enthusiast and you're looking for a retro-style body that can give you great quality images and a nice collection of first-rate glass, have a look at the X-Pro1 and be sure to update your firmware as soon as you get yours. For B&H and Kelby One, I'm Larry Becker. Thanks for watching.
Whether you're a hobbyist or a professional, B&H has the answers to your questions. Experience a world of technology at our New York City Superstore. Connect with us online or give us a call. Our staff of experts is happy to help.
Scott Kelby here, and welcome to this quick tour of our online training. We have hundreds of online classes for you, covering everything from lighting to landscape photography. From portrait photography to sports, we have classes on wedding, automotive photography, shooting, food, fashion, travel, you name it. The most incredible part of this is the price. You get all of this for just $199 a year, or you can pay monthly for just $24.95. 24-hour a day, 7-day-a-week access from anywhere in the world. I invite you to join with us today and start learning right now.